Well, hello once again, and welcome everyone to this employment law session. You guys hopefully know me by now. My name is Lior Samfiru. I'm the employment lawyer. I am one of the co-founding partners of Samfiru Tumarkin LLP. We're the biggest employment law firm, employee side employment law firm in Canada. We operate in Ontario, BC, and Alberta, and I am here, like I am every week, to answer your questions, to tell you what you need to know about employment law, about workplace rights, to tell you what you need to know if you're dealing with a problem in the workplace. Let's face it, I know a lot of employees are dealing now with issues surrounding vaccinations, mandatory vaccines. I've been fielding those questions every single day, multiple times a day for the past number of weeks. If you have questions, now is the time to ask. And hopefully I can help shed some light on your situation. Don't be bashful. This is the time. This is the place. Let me give you some other contact information. To connect with me off social media, to have a private chat about your matter, very easy, very simple to do. All you do is you go to employmentlawyer.ca. You see the address there at the bottom, employmentlawyer.ca. That's our firm's website. You'll see all the contact information there, phone number, email address, everything you need to know to connect with me off air. And you can also, of course, read a lot of information there about your workplace rights and understand more about those important topics. So again, my name is Lior Samfiru, the employment lawyer, and I'm here live. I'm here for one purpose and one purpose only, to take your questions. Over the past number of weeks, as I've said right off the top, I was dealing with and have been dealing with a lot of questions surrounding mandatory vaccines and the legality of mandatory vaccines. So as I'm waiting for your questions today, I thought that would be a good place to start, talking a bit about mandatory vaccines. So let's see. Well, you know what? Why don't I start with some questions right now, and then we'll switch back. Again, ask your questions. I'm live. You're live. Only one purpose: to answer questions. From Leah on YouTube. Leah says, I lost my job as I am not vaccinated. All Hebrew Jewish schools in Toronto did it to teachers. So Leah, if you are not part of a union, then you are owed, at a minimum, you are owed severance. And depending on how long you've worked there, Leah, severance could be as much as 24 months. So right off the bat, that's that issue. Potentially also there could be human rights damages owing, because in most cases it's not legal to fire someone if they don't get vaccinated, okay? So at a minimum, severance, and potentially more than that. It isn't legal in most cases to do what you've described your employer has done. Now, this assumes you're not part of a union. So Leah, if you're not part of a union, here's what you have to do. You need to connect with me off social media so I can help you. My team can help you. We can get this resolved fairly quickly. To connect with me, Leah, easy. Just go to employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca. You'll see the address right there. And you can connect with me that way. So thanks for that question, Leah. So Tanya asks, does Ontario health and safety legislation trump charter rights? Well, first of all, the charter only applies to government. So if your employer does something, the charter does not apply to the government. Now, the charter rights do have are subject to reasonable limits. So whatever the government does, they can always argue and try to convince a court that even though there are charter rights that are being infringed, there are reasonable limits and it's justified. But keep in mind, if your employer does something, it may be a human rights violation, it may be a wrongful dismissal, but it can never be a charter violation, because the charter does not apply to employers. It doesn't apply to you or me. It only applies to government action. Okay? Thanks for that, Tanya. So Frank asks, my company I work for doesn't wear masks. Well, they have to wear masks. So if they don't wear masks, you can file, or if they're not mandating masks and people are just walking around without masks, you can file a complaint with the Ministry of Labor, the Occupational Health and Safety part of the Ministry of Labor. You can even refuse work if your employer is not dealing or not doing what it's supposed to. But filing a complaint with the Ministry of Labor usually is going to do that. They're going to send in an investigator. They're going to order your employer to do what it's supposed to. They even could be fines or penalties. So unless you work in a jurisdiction where masks have been eliminated, for example, in Ontario, masks are mandatory. Same in other places. So that's not legal, Frank. we're going to continue answering questions. Again, my name, for those joining us, Lior Samfiru. I'm the employment lawyer. I'm a partner with Samfiru Tumarkin, LLP, and I'm here to answer your questions. Before I continue, I'll give you another address. You may have seen it on the bottom, covidrights.ca. Again, covidrights.ca, a website that we created to answer the most common questions about COVID and employment law and your rights. There's a number of tools there that you can find out more about your rights and entitlements. So thanks for that, and I'm going to continue answering. From Real Living on YouTube. What does a person do when companies violate the Charter of Rights? So as I said, Real Living, a company cannot violate the Charter because the Charter applies to government action, okay? An employer can violate the Human Rights Code, but not the Charter. Next question comes from Razor Sharp. My employer is threatening to fire me for cause because I haven't been vaccinated. Can vaccine status be a reason to fire someone without severance? No. Unless there is a government mandate that requires your employer to have you vaccinated, you cannot be fired for cause without severance. You would have to get severance and potentially other damages as well. Potentially human rights damages. Now, that's more nuanced, but certainly severance would have to be paid. So I know a lot of employers are saying that, oh no, if you don't get vaccinated, we're going to let you go for cause. We're not going to pay you any severance. No, can't do that because because vaccine was not part of your original terms of employment. If you don't do it, it's not going to be cause. It would have to be a without cause termination, meaning you have to get paid severance. If you lose your job, Razor Sharp, you call, you email, you connect with my office. We'll help you get the severance that you're owed. Same with you, everyone else. If you lost your job, if you're suspended, if you're put on an unpaid leave of absence, none of those things are legal unless there's a government mandate. And if not, you're owed compensation. You got to connect with me. All right. Next question comes to us from Chad on YouTube. A lot of questions from YouTube today. My wife is mandated to be vaccinated for her job in medical field, private company. She has to reply with her intention. Does she properly reply? She works in Quebec, so I can't answer for Quebec. I don't know what the laws and rules are in Quebec. I can only advise Ontario, BC, and Alberta. So it's not a matter of where the company is headquarters. It's a matter of where she physically works. So she'd have to seek some legal advice in Quebec. From Banana Nana 27. I love that name. I'm part of a union. The union is not helping us so many ways that they could. Unfortunately, if you're part of a union, this is important for everyone to know. The only one that's allowed to help you is the union. Now, a lot of you are saying, well, okay, thank you, but the union's not helping. So what do we do? Well, that's the problem with being unionized. When you're unionized, the employee doesn't have the rights. The union has the rights. So you cannot enforce your rights on your own. You can't hire a lawyer like me to help you. It has to be the union. And if the union doesn't help you, you don't have many options. Really, the only option at that point is to file a complaint against the union with the labor board. It's called the duty of fair representation complaint. I'm not a big fan of those. They're almost never successful. But that's the option. So pretty much everything we talk about on these sessions, or maybe you've seen me on TV or heard me on radio, that only applies to non-union employees. Unionized employees have very limited rights, unfortunately, because it's only the union that can pursue anything. Question from Tanya on Facebook. Her union has supported vaccine mandates. So you ask, can you retain your own lawyer? So Tanya, as I was saying, you cannot retain your own lawyer. The union members cannot. It has to be the union. If the union doesn't support you, you don't have many options, unfortunately, because that's what comes with being unionized. You give rights to the union. So let's see. Danielle, next question from Facebook. I'm supposed to go into a long-term care home for my career. Currently, they're accepting vaccination or rapid tests. They are implying that that may change, that they're okay. So that if I'm not vaxxed, I won't be able to do my job. Does that mean they have reasonable grounds to fire me? No, it doesn't. But you can't physically stop them from letting you go. All that means is if they let you go, you're going to be owed compensation, severance, potentially other damages as well. And that's important for everyone to understand, is that even if what your employer is doing is not right or not legal, there's actually no way to physically stop them from doing it. The only thing the law can do is, if something happens that's not right, that's not legal, you can get compensation. You can get some damages, but that's it. So no, Danielle, it does not mean they can let you go without compensation. They'll have to pay you compensation. If you lose your job, you know what to do. Same with you, everyone else. You contact me. You can do that easy through employmentlawyer.ca. Again, employmentlawyer.ca, to connect with me off social media so we can have a private discussion and so that I can actually help you. Let's see. Next question comes from, so Muhammad is asking another question about a union. Muhammad, as I was saying, only the union is allowed to help you. If they don't, your only option is to file a complaint against the union with the labor board. Not a great option, unfortunately, but that's what happens, unfortunately, with unionized employees. So Phyllis says, hi, I'm going to be terminated, non-union PSW. So Phyllis, as I was saying, unless your employer is only asking you to do what the government mandate is requiring them to do, if that's the only thing they're asking you, no more, unfortunately, you're not going to be owed compensation. But if the government says you can give Phyllis the option to have COVID tests, and they say, no, that we insist that you be vaccinated or else, well, that would be a wrongful dismissal. You would be owed severance, potentially other damages as well. That's why you have to give us a call, okay? So you can contact me, Phyllis, through employmentlawyer.ca. Debbie asks, next question, again from YouTube. If I am employed in an office setting with 10 employees or less, does severance still apply? Absolutely. The size of the company, the number of employees has no effect whatsoever on your severance. The main factors are your age, your position, and the length of your employment. The longer you work, the older you are, and the more senior a position you have, the more severance. But whether you work for a company with 1 employee or 1,000 employees, severance is going to be the same based on those factors. So yes, and by the way, for Debbie and for everyone else, if you want to find out right now, right this minute, if you want to find out how much severance you're owed, easy. Simply go to pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Again, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. You see that on the screen right here. We have our severance calculator tool there. You can find out in seconds how much severance you are owed. Maybe you want to know, wait a second, if I lose my job, do I get 6 months pay, 20 months pay, 2 weeks? What is it? Pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. First place you go to if you lost your job or are even worried about losing your job, okay? Let's see. Okay, next question from Tanya on Facebook. Can the Ministry of Education mandate the vaccine legally? Can they appeal? So yes, if the Ministry of Education, the problem is this, Tanya, if the Ministry of Education, if the government imposes something, you can challenge government action on the basis of the charter. But guess what? That takes 5 years. So that's not going to help you in the meantime with your job. So can you challenge it? Sure. Is it going to help you? No. And which is why all I'm talking about right now is on the issues between employee and employer rather than issues with the government. So Tracy asks, can my employer force me to take a PCR test if I am not vaccinated? So the answer is that unless there's a government mandate saying you have to have a test, for example, in long-term care homes in Ontario, unless there's that mandate, if you refuse to take the PCR test and because of that you lose your job, you're going to be owed severance. Okay, you're going to be owed severance in that situation. That may not be a human rights violation, but you would still be owed severance. So can you be let go? Yes, you can. The answer is almost you can be let go. You can't stop your employer from letting you go, but they would have to pay you severance. So Tracy, if you don't take the PCR test and because of that you lose your job, you'd be owed severance unless there's a government mandate. If you work for a long-term care home in Ontario and you refuse to take a PCR test, then you will lose your job without severance, okay? Let's see. Claudia, I think, has a follow-up question. She says, can the government mandate the employers in a similar way like they did in the US? Yes, a government can mandate employers, and once the government tells employers you have to do something, employers don't have a choice. Employers, at that point, their hands are tied. Now, you can challenge what the government said through charter, but as I said, that's going to take years, not a very effective way, unfortunately. So there's, from a practical standpoint, it's going to be very difficult to challenge what the government does. Keeping in mind, we do have a federal election coming up. That may change or may not change how things are. So we'll have to wait and see. So Danielle says, or asks, so long as an employer pays severance, they can fire you for not being vaxxed. So an employer cannot be stopped from letting you go. It's a question of what are the consequences of letting you go. At a minimum, yes, they have to pay you severance, but potentially they may also have to pay human rights damages because of a human rights violation. So potentially human rights, for sure, severance. That's the best answer I can give you. But as long as they pay, that's what they have to do. Remember, I've said this before, but it's important to remember. You may say my employer is doing something that's extremely illegal. And even if that is true, you can't physically restrain and stop your employer from letting you go. The way our laws work is if someone does something wrong, the law provides compensation. You can't stop that. Let's see. Muhammad, again, you're asking about union. The only one that can help you is the union. Peter asks on YouTube, how long before your case is heard? How long do you need to wait to get compensation? Well, every case is different, but on average, matters resolve within 6 or 8 weeks. Can be as little as 3 weeks, and the vast majority of cases resolve within 3 months. Now, you say how long before your case is heard? 99% of cases don't have to be heard. In other words, they settle, they resolve. We reach a resolution. It's only 1% of cases that actually go to court. So the chances, statistically speaking, that you have to go to court, the chances are very, very small. In many cases, we can resolve this very quickly, within a few weeks. So never be afraid of the process when it comes to employment law. In 99% of the cases, you're not going to be tied to a long legal battle. Next question is from Gennady on YouTube. I'm a post-secondary student and I'm mandated to take a vaccine before October 31st. My doctors are not answering my phone. What are my next steps? So we're talking about employment law here, so I'm not going to be able to advise you on that situation. You may want to seek some other advice. I can provide you a referral if you need that, Gennady. Let's see, next question from Jennifer. Jennifer says, so I work as a nurse. They are not requiring vaccination as of yet, but require testing. Can I serve a notice of liability to refuse testing? The notice of liability is a waste of time. So no, I've heard a lot about that. It does nothing. It won't change anything. It won't give you new rights. It won't prevent your employer from doing anything. So unfortunately, it doesn't do anything. It's a piece of paper. It's going to kill trees for no reason. So really, there's no point. Olga asked him if I'm a lawyer in California. No, I like California, but no, I'm a lawyer in Canada. So next question from Riot Earth, or I think that's how it's pronounced. There's an exclamation mark there on YouTube. I'm trying to get a religious exemption, and now my employer wants a letter from my religious official. My pastor passed away in February, and I don't attend church. Can they deny my exemption? Well, the problem, of course, Riot Earth, is how do you establish that that's a legitimate religious issue? Everyone can simply say, hey, for religious reasons, I'm not going to do that. It may not be enough. So perhaps there's, even if you don't go to church, but maybe you can find an article written by a minister, a rabbi, whoever is your religious faith is involved, where they confirm that not getting this vaccine or a vaccine is part of the religion. A religious exemption is a very legitimate thing, 100%. You have to show that it's a genuinely held belief, but ideally you also want to show that it's not just you deciding that, it's a legitimate part of the religion. So you need to find a way to get some corroboration to what you have to say. And it may be as easy as finding an article written by someone. That could help as well. So Muhammad asks, can you get severance if I'm let go during the 3-month probation? Muhammad, you're part of a union, so I can't answer that. Generally speaking, for non-union employees, only for non-union employees, you may well be owed severance if you're let go in the first 3 months, depending on the terms of the employment agreement that you signed. Let's see. From next question from Mig Jones. Let's see. If your job is no longer available because your program funding ends after 13 years, are you entitled to severance? Absolutely. In fact, you could easily be owed a year's pay or more. It's very simple. If you had a job and you lost your job, you're going to be owed severance in almost all cases. Not all cases, but almost all cases. So yeah, so Mig Jones, if you've lost your job or are about to, call me. Connect with me right away through employmentlawyer.ca. I'll be able to help you get that severance. And even if you are offered severance, chances are 90% of the time, what you're offered is a lot less than what you're actually owed. So even if you've been offered severance, call me. Let's talk about what you're actually owed, okay? And again, employmentlawyer.ca. Let's see. I'm getting a lot of questions. So I'm trying to make sure I don't miss anything. So Debbie asks on YouTube, can the company give you notice instead of paying severance? Example, let's say you're entitled to 10 weeks severance. Can they give you 10 weeks notice instead? Yes, they can, as long as they give you 10 weeks notice. But here's the problem that I see, Debbie. An employee is owed 6 months severance, but they're only given 10 weeks notice. Well, in that case, the employer has to make up the difference in paying severance. So yes, an employer can provide, instead of severance, sufficient advance notice. In most cases, the vast majority of cases that I've seen, an employer provides a lot less notice than what they're supposed to, so they still owe the employee a substantial amount of severance. Let's see, next question comes to us from Steve. When my doctor told me I would be fired, or my boss told me that I would be fired for not getting vaccinated, I sent him a link to one of your past videos. It worked. I am now allowed to work from home. Thank you. Wow, that's amazing. Well, there you go. There's a solution. Send copies of my videos. Maybe that works. Thank you very much, Steve. That's very kind of you. I'm glad that the matter got resolved. Next question from a man called Dustin. Simple. Should people serve their employers and supervisors notices of liability? Just answer that. Waste of time, waste of paper. Please don't bother. It's not going to do anything. Let's see. Spicy McNuggets has a U.S. question. Again, we're in Canada. No idea about U.S. laws. Leanne says, I'm not being rude, but you're a lawyer and another lawyer may say something completely different than you. It is up to a judge. You're absolutely right, but this is not my first barbecue. Google me. I kind of know what I'm doing, kind of know what I'm saying. So all I can tell you is my expertise. If you go to a doctor, the doctor is going to give you the doctor's best medical advice. Okay? Another doctor may see it differently. I would not come on here unless I was confident, but you're absolutely right. What a court could do is anyone's guess, but these are not new principles. We've had employment law as long as we've had a country. So I kind of know what I'm saying. Let's see. So Jennifer says, if I can't serve a notice of liability, am I able to refuse testing and have a solid leg to stand on? So as I said, you can refuse testing unless there's a government mandate that says you must be tested. If there isn't a government mandate and you refuse test, it's still up to your employer. Do they let you go or not? If they let you go, you're going to be owed severance. All right. Whereas if there was a government mandate and you refused and you were let go, you would not be owed severance. But remember what I've been saying is you can't do anything to physically prevent your employer from letting you go. Okay. So oftentimes the analysis, and you know, I know this sounds harsh, but the analysis has to start with you deciding, am I willing to lose my job? because ultimately, if your employer wants to let you go, it's going to happen. Now, yes, we can get compensation afterwards, sure, but you have to decide, am I willing to lose my job? I know it sounds harsh, but that's the reality. I don't like it, but that's how our laws work. Nick on YouTube says, my friend's place is mandating the vaccine and now released a deadline. He has to get the vaccine by September the 22nd. Otherwise, he'll be placed on an unpaid leave. And if he doesn't, he'll get terminated. So both an unpaid leave, an unpaid leave is also considered a termination because an employer does not have a right to put you on an unpaid leave, okay? An unpaid leave is a termination. So whether he's put on an unpaid leave or he's terminated, he's going to be owed severance, assuming, of course, he's not part of a union, potentially other damages as well. So he has to decide, am I better off losing my job and getting compensated, or am I better off getting the vaccine and keeping my job? That's a personal decision. If he does lose his job, or if he is put on an unpaid leave of absence, he needs to contact me as soon as possible. Again, I'm going to give that information, employmentlawyer.ca, to connect with me, to connect with my team. And by the way, we've been getting hundreds, if not thousands of questions, calls, emails. We're getting through all of them. We will be back to you if you contacted us. It may take us a day or two longer than usual, but we will be back to you, okay? So just hang in there. We'll be back. Let's see. Next question from Dwayne. Dwayne says, where I work, the company is using the Occupational Health and Safety Act rule that states employers are required to provide a place of employment free of recognized hazards. The problem is that the government decides what is free of hazards, what is safe. And the government has said, as of now, that you can be safe in the workplace with masks and social distancing, that there's no requirement for a vaccine in order to be safe. So your employer cannot use that because ultimately the government, not me, not you, not the employer, the government decides what's considered safe. And right now they've decided it's considered safe even without a vaccine. That's not me saying, and that may change, but right now that's where we are. Let's see. I'll take one more question from, let's see. Okay, Bruce says, I've been told that some of my emails are rude. I don't really agree, but have tried to make some adjustments, retone. What do you think about being fired for rudeness without cause? Well, depends how rude. I mean, I'd have to see the email. Are you using profanity? Are you putting people down? Are you being, racist? I'd want to see the devil's in the details. What I will say, it's very difficult to let someone go for cause. Very difficult. But without seeing those emails, I really can't say. So I'm not going to tell you yes or no, but it's going to be difficult always for your employer to let you go for cause, i.e. without severance. You know what? I'm going to take one last question. We started a minute late, so I'll take one more question. So let's see here. So from Kim on YouTube says, my job is going to put me on an inactive status because I will not take the vaccine. Unless there's a government mandate, Kim, that requires you to have a vaccine, and let's face it, right now there isn't, then that's not legal. If you're put on an inactive status, that is a termination. You're going to be owed severance and potentially other damages. If that happens, call me, email me, employmentlawyer.ca. Guys, I know there's a lot more questions here. This is the time we've had for today. I'm not going to go anywhere, though. You want to reach out to me privately off social media, no problem. Go to employmentlawyer.ca. I'm going to be back here next week. We're going to do more of these sessions with my colleagues, so we're going to give you plenty of opportunities to answer your questions. But if you have an issue, if you lost your job, if you've been suspended, if you've been given an ultimatum, don't wait a week. Don't even wait a day. Contact me today through employmentlawyer.ca. Guys, thank you very much. I know these are stressful times. I'm doing what I can to provide helpful information. My name is Lior Samfiru. I'm the employment lawyer, and I will be back here to talk to you. In the meantime, reach out through employmentlawyer.ca. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.